There's a lot of great home gym equipment out there today, but honestly, some of it is a bit overrated. There might be a few hot takes in this video and a few hurt feelings, but I'm okay with it. Let's go. What's up guys, Kyle with HypertroFit.com, the best place to design your home gym and develop your training program. Today we are covering what I think are the most overrated pieces of equipment or types of equipment in the home gym industry. And I do want to preface this with saying that everything that I talk about today, overrated does not mean bad. In fact, everything I'm covering is incredibly good equipment that I would be more than happy to own. The purpose is more to show that the alternatives to some of the most hyped equipment out there are oftentimes just as good and in many cases going to save you a ton of money. I think the most overrated piece of equipment in a home gym is a 3x3 rack, specifically with 1-inch holes. Now, let me preface this with saying I think that a 3x3 rack is an absolute mainstay in a home gym, and you should go for a 3x3 rack in most cases because it's going to have the most compatibility. My issue is with the 1-inch hole requirement, not because they're bad, but because this idea that 1-inch holes give you the most compatibility, it's true, but it's not completely true in that 5/8-inch holes give you pretty much the exact same amount of compatibility, and oftentimes it gives you all of that at a cheaper price point. Not to mention, one of the benefits of a 5/8-inch hole system on a rack is west side spacing, where you can have even more incremental adjustments through the bench press range of motion for not only bench press, but any lower body exercises where you're setting up safeties, safety straps, J hooks. It just gives you a little bit more versatility, especially if you're kind of in between jumps on a typical 1-inch rack. And this is something that you can't do on a 1-inch hole rack. I'm not here to say that a 5/8-inch rack is better than a 1-inch rack, but I am going to tell you that a 1-inch rack is not better. They're both perfectly acceptable, and on a 3x3 frame, you're going to be able to find any attachment that you want, whether it's a J hook, a safety strap, a safety arm, a dip attachment, Smith machine attachments, you name it. Every company is supporting a 1-inch and a 5/8-inch hole size on a 3x3 rack. That's not to say you won't come across some boutique brands that don't do it or companies that aren't based in the US that don't do it. But if you have the opportunity to build a power rack, a 3x3 platform on 1-inch or 5/8-inch is perfectly fine. The amount of discourse I see around 1-inch being the only way to go just makes no sense. I have a 5/8-inch rack. I've had it for 6 years. It's incredible. I've never once looked for a piece that I wanted to add to it that I couldn't because it was a 5/8-inch rack. Next on my list is a Smith machine. This is something that I've found very funny over the last couple of years in the home gym community, is the obsession with Smith machines. And don't get me wrong, they do have their place. There are benefits to a Smith machine, and I'm also not saying that I will never own one in my gym, but I find it funny in that when I was training in a commercial gym for 10 years, I could probably count on 2 hands how many times I actually used a Smith machine. I never cared to even bother with it. And so the last couple of years, this obsession and growing fondness for a Smith machine, I've always just found funny because these are all replicating movements that you just do with a barbell. And everybody has a barbell, and in most cases, you're gonna get more out of that barbell exercise. Again, I know there are reasons to use a Smith machine. It does have some benefits, but for the most part, it's really not that special. So the amount of attention that's gone into the Smith machine category, I find funny. And in most cases, unless you have a very complete setup or you have a very specific use case for a Smith machine, it is a very overhyped piece of equipment that you do not need. Now, this next one may ruffle some feathers, but I am going to come out and say that made in America equipment is overrated. I love made in America equipment. I have plenty of it. I thoroughly supporting smaller businesses, smaller companies, especially local ones here that are creating awesome stuff. I'm not saying that it's not worth it. I'm not saying that there aren't American companies making amazing equipment. They all are doing exactly that. What I am saying is the idea that because it was imported, it's lesser than makes no sense, and in my experience is just completely factually incorrect. The vast majority of equipment that I have in this gym is imported. I've used tons of made in America stuff. I've used tons of imported stuff directly beside it, and I can promise you in most cases you would never know the difference. If you took a Rep PR5000 rack, stood it up right next to a Rogue Monster rack, put them in the same color with no branding, you're not going to notice a difference. Now, obviously the rep rack is in metric, so there is a millimeter difference on some of the sizing there in terms of the hole spacing and the width of the uprights. But for all intents and purposes, it's the exact same. And in many cases, you're gonna save money on the imported version. Whenever I'm purchasing something from my gym, made in America is interesting, but it's not the most important thing to me. The most important thing to me is this the best equipment piece for me? That's going to come down to value, build, craftsmanship, all those three things fitting together. And once I land on that specific piece, that's what I purchase, that's what I bring in here. It is never going to be country first. I'm sorry. I'm here to get the best workouts in my space and the best value out of my gym. So whatever company is putting forth that effort to make that product, that's what I'm going to bring in here. All of these machines that I have in the back here, they're all imported and they're all phenomenal. I've never once used my Rep Adonis and been like, man, I wish this was made in America. Same thing with the Titan leg extension leg curl. It's an incredible piece of equipment. It's imported and I would not change a thing about it. It's high value, high quality, and well worth the price. So yes, made in America is awesome when it makes sense, but it's not something that I would pay an upcharge for just for that sticker on the box. And the final thing that I will say is overrated in a home gym is machines across the board. Yes, you're gonna look at my gym and be like, you got all kinds of machines, and that's completely true. But for the first 5 years of my home gym, I had a power rack, I had a GHD, and I had barbells and an adjustable bench and adjustable dumbbells. That was it. I didn't have any other machines because I didn't have the space or the budget for it. The vast majority of training that you do and the highest value exercises that you do in your home gym are going to come from free weights. Only when you have the space and the budget and everything else accounted for do machines start to make sense if that's how you train. But if you start to look at the value proposition here, most of these machines, you're looking at $2,000–$3,000 to be able to perform 2 or 3 exercises. A functional trainer is a bit different in that actually opens up hundreds, arguably, of exercises, and I do highly recommend it as your first real machine upgrade if you have the budget and the space for it. But when you start looking at something like a leg extension leg curl, a hack squat leg press, these are massive pieces of equipment. They cost a ton of money, and they're adding 2, maybe 3 exercises to your gym. So they do have their place. They are valuable. Obviously, I wouldn't buy them if they weren't valuable, but in terms of priority, they are last on the list, and they are way overrated compared to just having a quality set of adjustable dumbbells, some nice barbells, a power rack, and an adjustable bench. And that is my list of overrated home gym equipment. So if you made it this far, I would love to know your opinions on my list. Is there anything that I am completely wrong on, you completely disagree with? Let me know, sound off down below. Or are there other things that I missed that you also think are super overrated in this space? I would love to hear it down in the comments. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will catch you again in the next one.